Everybody, it's Nancy Fox, the Business Fox, and I just wanted to chat with you for a few minutes today because something came up at my networking lunch that I had last week. It was sort of interesting, and I wanted to share it with you. I had lunch with a few of my very revered colleagues, and I noticed something really interesting. Everybody at lunch was going through some kind of a change, whether it was a job role change or they were changing from having a job into being an entrepreneur, or they were going through some kind of business direction change. And I said, wow, this is really interesting. And I've recently gone through a change in my business as well. So I said, boy, this is really sort of an interesting kind. It was actually coincidental. And I said, I wonder what's really happening here. And as I started listening to everybody was sharing about the difficulties that they were experiencing in either deciding to go through a change or what they were going through in that change. And I said, wow, I could really relate to that. So when I thought about it, what I really wanted to share with you today is, what does it really take to go through a change? How do you know when it's time to make a change? It was very challenging for me. And then when I thought about it, I realized that the struggle really, there's one thing that is very common in the struggle, that everybody's going through this same thing when they're going through the prospect of making a change. And I'll talk to you about that in a second. So very often when you're confronted with the notion of change, sometimes it's out of your control. So for example, one of my colleagues, he was actually a specialist in the real estate market. And in 2007, 8, and into 09, obviously we know what happened to the real estate market. That was his niche specialty. And he had no choice but to make a change, or he was just gonna, he's just gonna go belly up. So what he did was he made a niche change, and he got into, and he analyzed the market, he changed direction, and he was very successful in it. Today he is a specialist in M&A. And another colleague of mine is now being confronted with change because her job was phased out. Her dream is to work for herself. And even more important, she wants to work for herself alongside of her husband. That's her dream. So she had no choice but to make a change because her job was phased out. But she's confronted with, should I take another job, or should I live my dream and work for myself alongside of my husband? So it's another issue about change. Which way do we go once we're confronted with no choice around change? But then there's the third kind of change, which is, okay, I have a choice about this. Should I change now or should I not? Should I change the business direction? Should I take on an assistant? Should I hire? Should I fire? All these things are changes that we can be confronted with when we're going through the evolution of business. So what stops us all, this is what I realized, is that the number one thing that is common to all of us when we're confronted with change is the experience of fear. And everybody, has a reaction to that whole fear situation. Most often times it stops us. That's the number one thing that will stop us when we're confronted with change, even if it's a good change. We're afraid. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know the outcome. So here are some tips that I want to give you that I've cultivated over the years of working with many hundreds of clients and going through a number of very, very challenging changes myself, but coming out the other side successfully. So the first thing is, you really need to check in with your vision and your own mindset. What is the vision for your life? That, getting connected to that, is the number one thing to do when you're considering a change. The second thing is to analyze. So the right part of the brain should be checking in with your intuitive feelings about the change. The second thing is to do something very logical on the left side of your brain, and that's to analyze. Analyze market trends, analyze your risk aversion factor. So for myself, as I was considering looking at a change in my own business direction, I really wanted to go into the online education arena. And I did some analysis of the market, and it's doing nothing but growing. Every year it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and that's what the trend will be. So I feel very comfortable that I analyze that, and I know that's going to be a good direction. The third thing is to actually put a stake in the ground and choose. and make a choice and trust yourself that you've made a choice and you're going to live with it and you're going to be successful. If you don't trust yourself, whatever choice you make, whether to stay put or to not, you're going to be second guessing yourself. And wouldn't you rather make a decision and trust yourself and really just go for it instead of doing nothing? That's a huge piece of the puzzle. I'm going to add a fourth thing. Usually I look at three. There's a fourth thing here, and that is to get input. Now, I want you to hear this very carefully, because I'm going to recommend that you get input, but I want it to be selective, because if you ask family and friends, they're coming from a bigger place of fear than you. So very often they're going to be afraid for you to make a change, even if it's a good change. So be careful about that. Get the kind of input from trusted mentors, people who have gone through change successfully, and they can give you the good pros and the cons of this whole thing. So you definitely want to be evaluating pros and cons, but get selective input from people who have done it successfully and will give you very smart, savvy input, not coming from fear. And as a matter of fact, there's going to be some changes that I want to make in this particular group, and I'm going to be sharing them with you very, very soon. In fact, on or around November 1st, you're going to see a big change to this group, and I want to invite you back. Come back and visit, because what I want to be doing some changes around is what's happening as an opportunity for you in the marketplace today that's different than ever before, and I want to start to create a community around that discussion and around that support. And I'll be sharing a lot more about that on or around November 1st, so do be checking back. Of course, I'll be communicating with you before then, but I want you to be staying tuned for the big changes that are coming from us at the Business Fox. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.